Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jen Durrell.
Good evening to all my weirdos and weirdettes. Thank you so much for joining me on Talking Weird for the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and I am delighted that you have joined us tonight. It is hot here today in the Northwoods. My goodness, it's probably hot all over the country, so I shouldn't complain, I suppose. But it was one of those days with a lot of ups and downs, or a couple of ups and downs for me anyway. For those of you listening to the show regularly know I'm currently producing a documentary about Raymond Palmer, also known as the man who invented flying saucers. And you could do me a big favor by going and finding that page on Facebook, or just putting theshavermystery.com into a browser and then going to that. It'll take you straight to the Facebook page and liking it, where I'm talking about the experience of making the documentary and also having regular updates about what I'm finding. But today I lost access to a major location I was hoping to shoot at, which was very unfortunate. But then I had a phone call with somebody who was very familiar with Richard Shaver, who was Raymond Palmer's, I suppose, co-creator of the Shaver mystery, the idea that there were these alien creatures who lived beneath the earth and interfered with mankind, interjected into popular consciousness a few years before flying saucers appeared in our skies. And many people think it kind of predates the flying saucer mystery and set us up for the idea of visitations and abductions and the like. But the man I talked to today had all kinds of fascinating stories I'd never read about or heard about in any of the biographies or any of the primary materials. So I am a little bit excited tonight because I literally got off the phone call, which went for a few hours, about 10 minutes before the show. So I'm very excited. But I'm also excited about tonight's guest. I've been meaning to have him on forever. He's a writer and a Bigfoot experiencer, and he's well known for his popular shows Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob and Beyond BMR. And tonight we're going to be talking both about Bigfoots and about Dogman, about some of his own experiences, as well as a bunch of other things. So it's well past time I had him on the show, and I am delighted to welcome to Talking Weird Bigfoot Michigan Rob.
Well, hello, Dr. Dean.
It's a delight to have you here.
Well, it's my pleasure. I've seen your show several times. You, Jason, everything across Doug's platform is quality, and I'm just thankful to have having the evening to spend with you.
I'm glad that you're spending it with me. We've chatted before on some of the shows on Texas Front Porch, I think, and maybe one of Jason's shows. So we've talked before, and they've been top shows. And we'll say it again at the end, but how do people get a hold of where you are and the things that you do and the shows you produce?
Really quickly. I have a YouTube channel, Bigfoot Michigan Rob. You can find me on BMR at gmail.com for if you have encounter stories that I take and produce and put out. And yeah, I'm all over social media. I'm not gonna get all that. Facebook, Instagram, the whole 9 yards, like everybody else. Primarily the YouTube channel, and of course, I'm also teamed up with Tex on his platform, Texas Front Porch. So we've been doing this together for quite a while. 2 years for me, Tex for like 5 years. So we're all kind of one big happy family over there. And so it's just a delightful experience that I've had moving forward. So
how before you got into actually doing the shows, and we'll talk about that
Yeah.
as well, how did you originally get interested in Bigfoot and cryptids?
Well, it's funny because as a kid, my dad, it's my father, my brother, he brought us up right off the bat on the old black and whites. And this sounds cliche because I've heard this, but it's so true. Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, the black and white, the vampire movies, the werewolf, all those things. So right out of the get go, I was interested in monsters. And as life progressed, I was fascinated on the subject and I was always intrigued, fascinated. And then I happened to see that In Search of came out, Leonard Nimoy. Then I saw the Patterson Gimlin film. He did that and some UFO stuff. So I was hooked. So I would always go back then, try to find things at the library or, this is pre-internet, of course. So it was always hard to find good quality material. But yeah, always been fascinated. And it kind of progressed throughout life as far as my fascination with, you know, talking weird. I like the weird stuff, right? So it's apropos to be on the show.
And at some stage, you had your own encounter, right?
I did. How I even started my channel, how I got involved with this, and it was just out of wanting to help people. And we'll get into this because I had a very traumatic encounter, Dean, and I had nowhere to go after this encounter. And that's how I started, my channel, Bigfoot Michigan Rob. I had an encounter and people said, you have to get this out, Rob. You have to tell people, let them know. So they suggested I start a YouTube channel or make a video. So I'll be honest with you, back in my encounter was in 2018, and we'll just get into that. But briefly, though, I said, well, I got to make an account. I have to tell my story to the people. They said, yes, Rob, it's good therapy. Get it out there. So I said, well, my name's Rob. I live in Michigan. I saw a Bigfoot. So I made a Bigfoot Michigan Rob handle, opened up a channel, not expecting to start a podcast or anything like that. But I told my story to the YouTube audience. And I had no idea what to expect. I used YouTube pretty much to watch concerts. I would always go back to the days of growing up and watch older concerts because I'm a music guy. So I love watching live concerts on TV. So I did this video, did my encounter, and like 2 weeks later, Dina, like 2,000 people viewed it. And these people were like, Rob, you've got to, do something with this. Long story short, I get involved with some people. And I met Tex. Then we got together on some things and made a collaboration. And that's how my media or my personality started. But it only started, though, Dean, is because of my encounter. And it was June 15th. I'll never forget the dates. June 15th of 2018. With my girlfriend at the time, Cindy, I said, honey, I'm an outdoorsman. She wasn't much of an outdoors person. So I said, look, I got this trip planned to the Manistee National Forest, which is Lake Cadillac Lake in Michigan. I said, look, I rented a cabin, a small little boat. We're going to do some fishing. So to her reluctance, yeah, you know what, Rob? Okay, I'll go with you. Well, okay. So we take off, head up to Cadillac, Michigan. And as I made mention, it backs up to the Manistee National Forest. So we get to Lake Cadillac. We get situated in the cabin. Everything's set up. I get the boat set up. We go out on the lake. So we're out on Lake Cadillac. Now, Lake Cadillac, Dean and everyone listening, is a big lake. It's surrounded by small industries, small mom and pop businesses, a lot of nice, big, beautiful homes, but an expansive lake. We're out fishing. So for about the first 45 minutes or so, we're not even getting a nibble. And this is maybe 10:30, 11 in the morning. Not getting a bite, not getting a nibble. Cindy's getting kind of bored and I can tell this. So I said, you know what? Let's pull in the fishing gear. Let's reel our rods in. Let's explore the lake. So we traverse about this very populous lake. We come across a canal, which I travel down, and it leads to another big lake, which is called Lake Mitchell. Lake Mitchell, if you look on Google Maps or look on a map, it's kind of the same size as Lake Cadillac, which I was surprised, but not as built up. There were homes, but not as many homes, very few businesses, if any. So it was a little more secluded, a little more herb, or a little more wilderness. It backed right to the woods all around. So it was pretty cool. So I'm like, okay, this looks nice scenery, nice background. So we dart off. I'm traveling like southwest to a corner of Lake Mitchell, which they call Mitchell Bay. We start drifting from shore about we're 90 feet offshore approximately. So now I said, Cindy, nice place. This is beautiful, beautiful. You just see the beautiful greens of the forest, the blues of the sky, beautiful water, nobody around. So I said, okay, Cindy, I'm going to set up our gear, our tackle, and we're going to do some fishing here. We're going to drift. So I go about setting up the gear, and I'm looking down into the boat, and I'm setting up the lures. Cindy says to me, hey, Rob, I think there's somebody throwing rocks at our boat. Now, I have to preface all this by saying I have no idea. I saw Bigfoot in 1973 on Leonard Nimoy, and we're talking 2018. So Bigfoot is the furthest thing from my mind at all. So I like Cindy. I look up. Yeah, there's no one along the shoreline, honey. No one's throwing rocks at the boat. I said, let me get the gear together. So I go about my business, and she's gazing about the forest. 40 seconds later, Rob, someone's throwing rocks at the boat. And now she's kind of perturbed. I look up, and I'm kind of perturbed because I don't see anything. I said, Cindy, let's put the brakes on this. Please let me set up our tackle. Let's set up the bait. Then I'll watch with you. So sure enough, maybe another 20 seconds later, for whatever reason, Dean and everybody listening, I happen just to kind of glance up. Blue sky, beautiful. I see something, an object coming down from the sky. I'm watching this thing, and it lands maybe 3.5, 4 feet in front of our boat. And sure enough, Dean, it was a rock about the size of a baseball. So I go to turn to Cindy and apologize because now I think someone is launching rocks. And this is June 15th, and already in June, Cindy is a sun goddess, ready at a nice tan rolling. From head to toe, her body was drained of all color. She's completely white, and she's asphyxiated at the shoreline. And I'm like, what is she looking at? I look to shore. We're 90 feet from shore approximately. And sure enough, standing on a shoreline is this creature. It's at least 9 feet tall. It's reddish brown hair, covered head to toe, right at the shoreline. And it was unusual looking because I kind of squint my eyes. I'm looking, what is this? It looked like a human being. It was a humanoid covered in hair, and it looked like a person with Down syndrome. And I always say this every time. I've been telling this story now since 2018. No offense to anybody, but it looked like a person. That's what the person looked like. It had a chest. It was a grayish chest. The face was gray, but it was kind of like wrinkled and had the weirdest eyes, were like offset. They weren't parallel. One was like a good half inch below. So they were like not lined up. And it looked like a human being, it really did. So I'm looking at this, and the arms are like on its side at this time. I'm looking at this thing. Then it takes the arms from its side, and it raises them parallel to the shoreline. And these arms stretched out, geez, another 8 feet. They're long. Now, here's the thing about this, which gets really kind of crazy, is that grayish humanoid Down syndrome looking person. It rolls back its shoulders, and the shoulders were up above the head, and this face, the gray skin got taut and tight. It dropped its mouth, its jaw extended and kind of detached from its head and kind of dropped. Opened its mouth, and the mouth was gaping. You remember the video game Pac-Man? It
Sure.
reminded me of that big. I mean, this was so huge that you could fit a softball or two in it, exposing.
Gosh.
And what I can recall was just there was 4 teeth, 2 on the bottom, 2 incisors tightly together, and 2 canine type teeth, like a Doberman Pinscher or a German Shepherd, but a lot bigger. But when it comes back, the face now contorts into what I call look like a demon. It totally metamorphosized from a humanoid looking thing into a thing that totally looked like the devil. And I say that every time, like a demon. This mouth is now engaping, and from the bellows of its guts, its insides, it lets out in unison a roar, a scream, and a yell. All these crazy sounds emanates, and I could feel it as it roared. It came right across the lake to the boat, and I can feel the reverberation inside me,
Wow.
and it hits me, and it's screaming and roaring. It hits so hard. My girlfriend's like 5'1", 109, 110 pounds. She falls off the boat into the water. And I can hear the splash. I hear her little scream. And now, Dean, I'm looking at this thing that totally looks like something from the gates of hell. And I try to move to my right to get her. But now all of a sudden, as I mentioned, the beautiful green forest backdrop, the beautiful blue sky, the greens, the blues of the water. I'm now looking through my eyes. It seemed like I got a filter because everything got very dull, almost like black and white. And it seemed like time was suspended, like it's very slow motion. And the thing is this, I cannot move to my right because I'm paralyzed. I can't move. I know that I have to move to my right, but there's this force on my chest that's not allowing that. I just start shaking my head and I snap out of it. All of a sudden, the beautiful colors of the wilderness of nature comes back. And now I'm cognizant. I get to Cindy, I get her in the boat, pull her up, I get her in. Now I'm petrified. I'm petrified to begin with. And I look to the shoreline. This is where I'm very scared now because I cannot, this thing is now gone. So I sped the boat around, I opened up the throttle, and I sped all the way across Lake Mitchell, through that canal, all the way across Lake Cadillac to where I had originally launched the boat. I get to the area, dock the boat, grab Cindy. I found a blanket, a beach blanket or towel, wrapped it on her. She's shaking. We get on the boat, and I immediately look for, well, I'm looking for a bar or restaurant, something where you can go inside, whatever. I find this bar on the corner, a half block up the road. Strangely enough, it's about 12:30 in the afternoon. It was like the middle of the week, so there's not a lot of people in this bar. And we go back to the far left corner of the bar. We sit down across from each other and we look at each other. And Cindy says, "Honey, what do you think that was?" My mind is running rampant. I'm thinking what I'm thinking, but then I say back to her, "I don't know. What do you think that was?" Now, mind you, we never watched a Bigfoot show or program ever together, ever. She goes, I think maybe it was that Bigfoot creature. And I says, I think maybe it was, honey. So barmaid comes up. What do you guys want? Cindy, not a drinker, not at all. I want a bottle of Bud Light and a shot of Jack Daniels. I said, I'll have the same, make it a double. She comes back, takes that shot of Jack down like a champ, like she's been drinking for 30 years, washes it down with the beer. I do the same. Hey, then she says, hey, should we report this to the DNR? Should we call the police, the authorities? I'm like thinking automatically, like everybody does, telling us an encounter, who's going to believe this? You know, we're leaving a bar, we're making up some story. Yeah, I guess you're right. But we were both still, I mean, she was totally in shock. I'm in shock. I don't know what this is. It it ended our trip. We came home. Immediately when we get home, again, this is 2018. So now we get home, we immediately immerse ourselves on the internet, looking up Bigfoot, looking up this, found similar images like what we saw, nothing like the demon looking thing that I described. Because again, I had two different looks at this thing, humanoid demon, blacked out, black and white, I should say, can't move, frozen. I read about infrasound, all these different things I started investigating. I'm not telling anybody this story though, because that's not believable. However, the story takes a very bad turn because August 15th of 2018, exactly 2 months to the date, Cindy died. She passed away.
Goodness gracious.
So when that happened, I owned a business at this time. My life I went to a dark place. I'm thinking this creature had something to do with it. I'm thinking that the reverberation from that yell, that scream, I'm thinking it messed up her inside, shook her up. I can't. I wanted to go back there. Literally, I wanted to go back there with like a bazooka and just blow up the forest. Her mom calls me, says she died of a heart attack. Cindy's mom and I were not on the best of terms anyway, because I owned a bar and she was anti anything that has to do with anything that's not, how shall I say, religious. I don't know what the proper term is, Dean. Not into that. I was an outcast. I was a no good guy. I owned a bar. I was a bad man. So she told me died of heart attack. I did not believe that. Could not get any autopsy reports because I was not family. So I don't know to this day how she passed, which is another mystery. So I went to work. I was just distraught, PTSD. I told my bar manager, here are the keys. You're not when I get back to work is when I get back to work. Just don't rip me off. Take the money, put it in the bank, man. I'll just monitor the bank from my house. And I didn't go back to work for 6 months. So
Gosh.
that's how bad I was. I mean, the encounter was pretty scary, but the thing that took the toll on me was the death because I kept blaming this creature. So I thought it was some evil entity, right? And the more research now for those 6 months, I was not just sitting there sleeping. I was looking up stuff online. And I found all these videos and I was talking to different Bigfoot paranormal people. Couldn't find anybody I liked or trusted. Then I came across this guy, Duke Sullivan, who finally listened to me and said, Rob, you're not going crazy. You saw something. 8 months later, I ran into Tex. We talked about it, developed a friendship. And yeah, I finally went back to work and everything and sold the business prior to COVID in 2020. Ironically, I got lucky. and got out of that because you know how the businesses in Michigan just took up like everybody else. If you're a bar or a restaurant owner back then, they all went 3,000 people lost their jobs during if you were a bar owner in Michigan in 2020. So that's another story. We're not getting into that. I got lucky with that. So ever since then, man, I was immersed into starting my channel. Because on the channel, I will take every Friday, I do encounter reports from subscribers and from emails to tell their stories because nobody knows what it's like to walk in those shoes unless you've been there. And when I was there, Dean, I could not find anybody that found me credible or believed me. And did not want to tell people because of the angst that I was going through. And I felt alone. I felt lonely. And that's really what sparked me into this, what I'm doing today with the show and everything, because I'm there to help people. Because I was alone for a long time until now. I'm fine today. Now I'm over it. I don't think that even today, it's hard for me to call it a Bigfoot just because of that metamorphosis. But I don't know. That's why I do this. What is out there? What is out there? What is this mystery? I'm not out to prove or solve anything. I've got peace of mind. I've put it to rest, you know, for Cindy. I don't think the Bigfoot killed her. I've since got my act together. But I tell you what, for a year, I thought I was losing my mind.
I've got so much to unpack and ask you about that, and that might be the most potent Bigfoot type story I've ever heard. But I'll ask first because a viewer asked a couple times this question: how far away was the Sasquatch? And
I
then I've
was,
got
like I say, I was
questions of
like
my own.
90, I was like drifting 90 feet from shore. So I was pretty close. Like
Right,
for people that are in sports, it's like running from first to second base in a Major League Baseball game. That's 90 feet.
that's close. It's interesting because what you said, other than it being an incredible tragedy, and it must have been so hard to deal with just on a human level. So it's always hard to poke around when you know somebody's had this bigger impact on them. And it's something which is often overlooked. People often overlook when they talk to people who've experienced these things, the actual impact that it can have on somebody's psyche undergoing this, particularly in your case where your girlfriend and your co-witness passes and it feels like it's related to it. Perhaps did you ever have a feeling? I know you said you didn't think that Bigfoot maybe killed her with infrasound or something, but do you think that maybe it might have been something that was, I don't know, was a herald of what might come to her, or somehow
Well,
was
well, here's the thing. When that well, again, you got to remember this is 2023. In 2018 it happened, and exactly 2 months to the day. I mean, June 15th we were there at Lake Cadillac. August 15th Cindy passed. 2 months, right? 60 days. Yes, at that particular time I thought whatever we saw was the culprit, because if you look back at the story, you know, my vision turned to like was skewed like a filter, black and white. Got hit with that, boom! I could feel it hit my body. She got flipped off. It was like how I kind of like to explain this. If you've ever seen when a bomb hits the earth and also it has that shock wave that comes out. I did not see that, but that's kind of what it felt like, that reverberation coming from the coastline to where I was. And I thought that being that she was such a small, petite person, that her insides were jumbled up or skewed, right? Or rattled. So so I'm immediately thinking that. Then, of course, the mom says heart attack. Well, and again, and I couldn't get any more details out of that. I haven't talked to that woman since that day she told me, to be honest. I was not even allowed at the funeral. Okay. So for me, my mental capacities were shot. Because I'm thinking at that particular moment in 2018 that yes, this creature did something harmful. Now, 5 years later, I'm much more experienced with this. I've spoken to hundreds of people. I'm kind of thinking that it was not. because there's a lot of things that you can't put two and two together. You just can't make sense of this. I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but I'm thinking that if nothing happened to me, I'm thinking maybe it was just fate. Maybe it was something that was going to happen anyway. And that's the hardest thing for me to grip. Dean, I've seen psychiatrists over this. In 2019, 2020, I was talking to these guys, and I could never. And I always had to lie about it because I never told them what I seen. Then I finally, after my third shrink, I had to tell somebody what was going on. I broke down, and told them I saw this creature because I was scared to tell people what I saw. Right? So, so I was in a quandary. I was just a mixed up guy. I prideful business owner, didn't care about work, didn't care about my livelihood, nothing, nothing. It affected me that way. Now I will say this: if she did not pass, I wouldn't have been that frantic. I would have been, wow, this is. I would have sure been shocked about what I saw, but what I would have probably done is dive into the investigation and not have this dark side that I I came up with, which was struck upon me. The death, if there was no death involved, I wouldn't have the trauma, the feelings of trauma, the PTSD that I have. I correlated the two together, and I don't think that's the case today. I mean, I'm fine today. I accept what happened, and I move on. So that's why I do this, because the mystery is. I'll always want to know how or why this happened. And to be honest with you, I can't say there was a Bigfoot for sure, because I could talk to people all the time, and you don't hear about these metamorphoses. I mean, how does it look like a human being that turned into a demonic looking creature? And I understand that Bigfoot can contort its face. I did research on, what was it, baboons. You ever see a baboon in the forest? How they have their faces natural, looking like the baboon, but when they get mad, how their face too will contort. Their teeth will. I mean, they'll look. They metamorphosize themselves and look at something different and crazy looking. So maybe this is what this was, a flesh and blood creature that showed that in fear. People told me that I was going through maybe where its children were, and it was just scaring me off. And then I could get to a lot of things. I talked to this girl, Robin McCrae, who says that she had mind speak with this thing. I mean, this story is so long and elaborate over 5 years of my personal investigation. I've got so many theories. I got so many questions that have been answered, but many have not been, and so many theories. When you think you know something, you don't know.
It's hard. You're familiar with me being somebody who theorizes often along, I guess,
Yeah.
a John Keelian or Jacques Verlaine type perspective, where I think a lot of these things aren't necessarily physical cryptids, but are something somewhat more metaphysical or more esoteric. And it's very easy for me to hypothesize where there isn't a story as
Yeah.
personal as yours. So I don't want to step on anything and be
Oh,
like
yeah.
the Mr. Keelian. I do know that there's a Bigfoot story, a relatively famous one, the Ruby Creek Report from back in the 1940s, when the Chapman family somewhere in Canada, a Native American family, were kind of terrorized by a Bigfoot. And I know that legend has it that most of that family died afterwards. So we don't often talk about Bigfoot reports being connected, witness reports being connected to deaths afterwards,
Hmm.
but you can't help but hear your story and think about that and think about things like the Mothman story in Point Pleasant, where many
Right.
witnesses died and the Silver Bridge collapse, and similar folkloric tales about when we encounter banshees or when we encounter other supernatural things that often is kind of harbinger of something horrible happening. So, I mean, that's obviously what I want to jump to, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I don't want to be stepping all over this
Well,
because it's such a clear
yeah.
tragedy. I mean, I'm sorry. This must have been a horrible thing for you to have
Oh,
experienced.
yeah. I can't. I'm looking back at it, and I can't believe the state of mind that I was in. I've told this story countless times, and every time I tell it, it brings me back. I can see this right now as I'm talking to you, Dr. Dean. I can see this as clear as day. I can see her face, Cindy, when I got her in a boat. I can see her face at the bar. I can see my bar manager's face when I gave him the keys and said, "See you later. I ain't coming back to work. Don't call me." I can see everything so vivid from 5 years ago. Well, yeah, 5 years ago. Today, my theory is this. I think that Bigfoot is interdimensional. I think it's something more than just flesh and blood. It's not the silly monkey running around. I think there is a paranormal aspect to it. It can I think it's metaphysical. I guess that's the best way to describe it. I think that, you hear about cloak. Now I've learned so much about Bigfoot, right? I mean, from what we all hear or research, the cloaking, you see there's orbs and there's a Bigfoot. There's so many avenues you can take this to. And then hell, who knows? Maybe it was a malevolent demonic force out in the woods. Because
Maybe.
not everything you see is Bigfoot either, right? You might think it's Bigfoot, but maybe it's just a demon. But this happened at 12:30 in the afternoon, which is again another thing. No one I'm probably one of the few guys who's seen the Bigfoot broad daylight and had it vocalized at me. I don't hear too many stories like that. You see the
Down.
shadows. You see the shadows. You see the transparent figure. You see the stump kind of rise up and the shadow disappear into the forest, right? Or you hear the Bigfoot crossing the road. Yeah, I've seen this hominoid or this 8-foot person covered in walk across. I've seen the face, and I've seen two faces.
The Down syndrome thing grabbed. You said it had a face like somebody that might be Down syndrome.
At the original onset, it looked like a human being covered in reddish brown hair, long hair. Like, you hear the stories about the hairy man, a person with covered long hair. Kind of, if you reflect back to those stories, that's what kind of don't remind me of because I had never heard the story until recently, but it was a human being in the face, but looked like a Down syndrome and older, gray, just a grayish face, offset eyes, regular mouth until it distended, the jaw dropped. So it was two different. I mean, there's a friend of mine, Sibylla Irwin. She does great renditions, and we're working together. We're doing the Down syndrome Bigfoot, and we're doing the demon Bigfoot. She's drawing for me both those composites, which I cannot wait because she's so fabulous at it. That helps explain what I've seen, I think, because it's so hard to tell everybody listening. It just again, it looked like you, then it looked like put a devil mask next to you. Totally different looking entities.
The Down syndrome thing is also interesting because the Betty and Barney Hill alien abduction report, Betty Hill had worked with Down syndrome children, and
Mhm.
she described the gray extraterrestrials as looking like they had this issue. So, I mean, this is probably a long bow to draw, but I'm always looking for commonalities between experiences. I'm always
Yeah.
looking for things which echo across the paranormal. So, I've never heard a Bigfoot description like that before. So when I heard it, my ears pricked up and it made me think about the Hill abduction report straight away as well.
No, that's a good recant on that or a good account on that. I started typing on Google Down syndrome Bigfoot. And we've all seen images of Bigfoot. Obviously, there's no pictures of an actual Bigfoot, right? It's all renditions. There are some that come kind of close to what it looked like that I've seen, and you do get reports. And it's not the first time, though. It's funny that you mentioned that because I've read reports and received and talked to people that have said that in their encounters that they've had or experience they've had, it did look like a human being, but kind of just something odd about them, right? Just off. And of course, I mean, when you're talking about something that's 8, 9 foot tall, covered in hair, of course it's going to look off. But this thing looked human in the onset.
Yeah, that change is fascinating, though, that it transforms into something else. The whole report, to me, reads like it's something which isn't entirely physical. Everything from its transformation to the effect that it had on you, the terror to it affecting Cindy falling into the water, to the kind of change to almost a black and white reality. These things all ring true to me, and they ring like something which is, beyond the norm. To shift gears a little bit, because we could talk about this encounter
Yeah,
for
we
the whole
could,
show. It's
well,
fascinating, just
yeah, we
fascinating.
could, yeah, we could, because yeah, we can shift gears because it's like, but you know what? For people listening in chat or listening later, I will say this: I don't think Bigfoot is a demon. I don't think Bigfoot's the Nephilim. Okay, today I've been 5 years removed from the encounter. Speaking with all the researchers I like Ron Moorhead, MK Davis. So I've talked to people respected, and I've talked to them all about my encounter. So I don't think Bigfoot's a demon. The question I have, though, I'm not so sure mine was actually Bigfoot. I think that it probably was something else, but that's my opinion. I have no proof of what it is. It's something different.
There's an excellent, excellent question from Veneer Traditionalist, and his question is, Rob, did you experience any paranormal activity after the encounter, poltergeist, orbs, etc.?
Absolutely. I see them all the time. It's funny. I've always seen things prior to I will say this, prior to my Bigfoot encounter or whatever that encounter was, I seen ghosts as a kid growing up. I seen a UFO, but I will tell you this: when I went back to work at the bar, I seen ghosts in the bar all the time. When I was 26. Now, prior to the Bigfoot, my m- the ex-wife and I saw shadow people in my house, and that's the whole. We don't have time for all that. I got so much stuff, Dean. We got probably part two for this. I've seen
We'll do a
ghosts.
part two. We'll bring you
Yeah,
back.
I seen ghosts and shadow people in my home. I was 26 years old. Found out that they were malevolent forces prior to the Bigfoot encounter. But after the Bigfoot encounter at my bar, I seen many ghosts. I seen my bar was it was built during Prohibition days. I seen 4 people dressed like the 2 women looked like flappers, 2 men looked like John Dillinger, sitting at the corner of my bar at night. It's 3 in the morning when I'm closing up the bar. I see them sitting there looking at and they're transparent. I didn't I'm shaking my eyes thinking what this was. I'm like, wow, there's ghosts in my bar. So I'm not scared. This is after the Bigfoot encounter, of course. So I'm not scared. I'm inquisitive. I'm like, so they're not paying attention to me. And I'm looking at these 4 ghosts, and they were dressed from the 1947, whatever year it was back then. So I had a square bar. They're at one corner. I'm at the other end. And I take my hand, I slam it down at the far end, 90 feet away, 60 feet away, 60 feet bar length. And they finally kind of look at me. And the funny thing is, I cleaned up this bar, and I was unusually working by myself this night, and the entire bar was clean. Dean, there was a bottle of Jack Daniels sitting on the bar that I know I did not leave out because we don't put liquor bars on the bar. You get a shot in your glass. We don't put bottles on the bar. And there was a glass filled with booze. And I'm watching these things. That shot glass filled with Jack Daniels levitated. It levitated, and then we lost the doctor. And then slipped out of this apparition's hand and it got crashed. It fell on top of the bar and smashed. broke all over the place. So yeah, I am Bigfoot Michigan Rob. We're here chatting, waiting for the good Dr. Dean to get back here. Who's in chat? Brian, let me look if you got Rob. Did you have any experience? Yes, I seen that. I'll try to run the show really quick till Doctor comes back. Absolutely metaphysical, veneer, traditionalist, yes. Maybe a Bigfoot can be possessed by a demon. Nancy, I don't know. I think yes. Maybe mine was possessed by a demon. That's kind of a good theory, Nancy. I believe in everything. I'm one of these guys that I've experienced a lot of things in life. I've seen ghosts as a little kid, as I made mention. My mom showed me my brother UFO. I'm petrified of the paranormal and demons. I can't even watch that show. What was it with Linda Blair? I finally watched it like 2 years ago with The Exorcist. I okay. I'm Catholic, so I believe in God. Therefore, I believe in the devil. So anything that has to do with demonic possession, I believe 100%. And was my Bigfoot possessed by a demon? Pro- I don't know. I'm thinking that's a very distinct possibility because the metamorphosis I experienced, it's something you see in movies, you guys. So I think that's a very good thought process. And so I don't know. But yeah, in my bar, I've seen ghosts at the bar. I cut that story. That's a 20-minute story. I went to the meat and potatoes with Dr. Bertram about seeing these ghosts. Prior to that, my employees would tell me that they'd seen shadows in the bar. They had seen things. They had cleaned up the bar before they're going home from work. There would be empty beer bottles on tables. They could hear laughter. There would be plates breaking. So, yeah, the bar itself to me was haunted. But a lot of like the earlier question that was posed, my senses are more heightened since my encounter of 2018. I've always thought I've had an ability to see things or experience things, I should say, but it heightened. It was aware because I was talking to this guy, Bob from Germany, and he told me, Rob, once you see a Bigfoot, a ghost, an apparition, you're more prevalent to see these things. Okay. You're like marked, they call it. I mean, I hate to use that word marked, but that's what he told me. You're kind of marked. It's like that third eye, the pineal gland, the pineal gland. My friend Jessica, we always joke about it because I always say it wrong, make it sound funny. But you have that everybody here, everybody watching and listening, you have that third eye, right? That's the one that looks into different realms, different realities, makes your light, it sharpens images. I've always had the ability to sum up a person. I'm the type of guy that can meet you for the first time, and in 30 seconds, I know what your intentions are. I can tell you if you're a good person or bad person. This was I was about 8 years old, and this kid on my block, I think I forgot his name though. I'm gonna call him Jimmy. Jimmy, I never liked Jimmy. He's 8 years old, and I told my mom and dad there's something going on with Jimmy. Jimmy's messed up. Oh, Rob, you just don't like the kid. I said, no, Ma, I don't like Jimmy. There's something wrong with him. Junior high school, Jimmy, we're 13, 14. Jimmy, again, I hate Jimmy. I told all my friends, there's something wrong with Jimmy. High school, Jimmy drops out of high school. Same kid that I've known on my block. So I go off to college. I get back from college, and my mom tells me, hey, you know that kid Jimmy who you always thought was a bad seed? She goes, you picked it out like when you're 8 or 9. You said, Mommy, Jimmy's bad. I go, yeah, he is bad. Why? What did he do? Well, he's in prison because he murdered his grandmother. So, yeah, I can sum up people pretty good. So I've always had a distinct ability to do these things. And I think that we all have that, but I think your awareness is heightened when you have a paranormal experience, when you have a cryptid experience, when you see a ghost. So, and there's Jason McLean. Thank
Hey,
you, Jason. How's
yeah.
it going?
Well, so I was actually going to be in the chat today, right? But I had to go pick up my daughter. She had a school thing. She just had her appendectomy, so she couldn't drive.
Yeah.
So I get back, and I'm just like, oh, I should
Excuse
probably
me.
hop on and see how Rob's doing,
And now I'm
right?
running the
Make sure,
show. Yeah. Right.
make sure everything. And all of a sudden, Dean's like, Jason, I'm like, what's up? He's like, I need you to hop on real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So here
So
it is.
Mothman sent us to Rob's show. So I've been just spewing off for the last several minutes, not too long. But you know me,
Gotcha.
Jason. I got the gift of gab. So I was entertaining everybody.
Yep. No, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to put up my green screen, but I figured making certain Rob wasn't derailing everything and setting everything on fire was probably the
Yeah,
optimal
no, I was
choice
having
here.
I was just answering some questions in chat, and
Mhm.
I went off on some of my paranormal experiences, and so it's pretty cool people in chat. So yeah, we were just finishing up basically on, the same old was Bigfoot, maybe a demon in my encounter with the metamorphosis, and the whole 9 yards, and then we're going off on. He was getting ready to change gears.
Yeah.
And then that's when I lost him. So I just started answering questions in chat.
Unfortunately, and Rob, you can speak to this as well. When you start speaking about certain things, certain people don't like that happening, and then you just kind of disappear from the internet for a bit.
Yes,
right. I don't know what happened.
Well, what happened was y'all were talking some truth, and somebody somewhere is like, button.
Oh, well, yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you got me for the next 10 minutes.
No, you continue, Jason. I cut in. I'd rather you keep going.
Oh no, Rob was just telling me where y'all were before you got EMP'd.
Well, we were yeah, Dean, we were you're just getting ready to change gears, and I lost you. And then I started telling the audience, I started answering audience questions, and told them about some of my other brief encounters. But with me, my encounters are 20 minutes at a time. So I kind of did the what do you call that? The what's that book you always get? The Cliff Note version of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, Cliff Notes are a wonderful tool that I apparently am incapable of using. Let's be honest. I don't. Rob knows. Rob knows.
Yeah, I know. I don't like using them either, but I was trying to figure out what to do here because I could have done a 20-minute story. I figured he was going to be back quick, but I thought it was like a little glitch in the Matrix.
No.
And he'd be back, but
my internet was gone altogether. I panicked and called Jason. I was like, my internet's gone. Rob's just.
Well, I gotta tell you. Well, you know what?
Fort.
I will tell you this though. It's weird because the last 4 days for me, we've had and again, Jason knows about my internet problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my equipment. Every day for 4 days from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., I don't have internet.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like clockwork, 2 to 7.
And by the way, my internet's never gone down during a show. I have internet problems sometimes, but I've never been like mid-show and had boop, it just fall out like that. Very strange.
Yeah, it is strange. It's probably the topics we talk about.
We have to touch though, because otherwise I'll get messages from people saying you falsely advertised that you would have Dogman. There was no Dogman discussion. We didn't get to Dogman at all.
Well, no, we didn't. Well, this is what we were alluding to. We were talking about though about how maybe that this entity, Bigfoot, whatever it is. Again, I would say I speculate what it was. How it can affect somebody, and how I mentioned how Cindy passed away. Well, just this past weekend, I did a story about Dogman in Wisconsin, by the way, Dr. Dean. And it was out in what's the name of the place? It was, let me try to think.
Was it down in Bray Road or Elkhorn or somewhere
No,
down there?
no. It was Buckhorn, not Elkhorn, but Buckhorn State Park.
Huh.
So, and this was 2018, kind of like, no coincidence when I had my encounter. This guy sends me this email 2 months ago. I just read it Friday. And it's kind of weird because it kind of correlates to today's show. And Rob, he's I read the email, and during the email I had to rewrite a lot of things because he was just all over the place. My fingers are trembling as I stroke the keypad. This is about my son, him and his friend. It was his son's name was it was Bobby and Vinny. They went camping, age of 19 in 2018, freshmen in college. They were celebrating a year of college together, and they went camping in Buckhorn State Park, Wisconsin. So, okay, Dad says, well, are you going to rent a cabin? Because there's a lot of cabin rentals. They said, no, Dad, we're going to take our tent. We bought a tent. We're going deep into the woods and be, men. So the dad reluctantly says, well, boys, what am I supposed to do? You're growing up. Okay. So they left on a Friday. They were supposed to be on Monday, like by noon. So, of course, on Monday, about 2 p.m., they don't show. Now, the dad is now calling his son. Well, no cell service, blah, blah, blah. In fact, the parents, Vinny's parents call Bobby's parents. Have you heard from the kids? No. So now 6 p.m. rolls around. No kids. So the family, the two sets of parents get together and they drive to the state park in Wisconsin. And now the dad remembers to tell the kids, look, okay, I know you're not going to use the cabin, but please take one of the trails from the back of the cabins. So at least I have kind of an idea where you're going to be. I know it's vast wilderness or forest. Just get an idea. So the kids said, yes, we will. So they get to the park and they find the cabins. They find one of two trails and they decide on trail A. They go down the trail. They're walking an hour. It's about 2 hours before it gets dark. And then they come across the kids' tent. They get to the tent. Now they're like, oh my God, the kids, the tent, there they are. They're blah, blah, blah. So they're yelling, Bobby, Vinny, Bobby, Vinny. No answer. No answer. Well, where are they at? They off fishing, hiking, whatever. They get to the tent, you guys. Bobby and Vinny are both in the tent. They're both sitting upright, and they've got this blank look on their face. It looks like they're traumatized. It looks like they're in a trance. And they grab their kids. They shake the shoulders of the kids. They snap out of it. Kind of like Dr. Dean, like I was talking about. I was in a trance for a split second when Cindy fell off the boat. I could do nothing. Bobby snaps out of it and yells, werewolf.
Gosh.
So this is a story this guy's telling me, and I can tell the guy's werewolf. Vinny doesn't say anything. So long story short, because this goes on for a little while, and we don't have a lot of time. He gets the kids home. Bobby and Vinny with their parents, and Bobby doesn't utter anything other than he keeps saying, I know, werewolf, my dad, werewolf. And that's all this kid would say. So they ended up taking their kid to a psychiatrist, a neurosurgeon, all these brain experts, because the kid talks. He's functional. He dropped out of college. He don't leave his house. He hasn't left the house in 5 years. Now this is 2023. I got this email 2 months ago. It's been 5 years since the kid has not left the house. He's petrified to leave the house, stays in there. Now, this, of course, according to the email I got, I'm just expanding on the story, talking about the story that I was sent. Won't do nothing. But, and here's the thing, though. Vinny, in the email, Vinny not only was, he was worse Then Bobby, because Vinny, a year later, went in mom and dad's garage, turned on the exhaust of the car, and asphyxiated himself and died.
Mm.
Good
So,
grief.
so now, I mean, us guys, this is talking weird. We all talk about this stuff. What is that? The kid yells werewolf in 2018. That's all he says. Doesn't say, give no other details. The best friend passes, commits alleged suicide. And the kid is a vegetable with his mom and dad. Don't leave the house. And I didn't mean to say it like that, of course. Vegetable, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, coincidence, you think? I mean, listen, what is in the forest is the bottom line. There's evil lurking in the forest, is my point. I can say Dogman or werewolf or Bigfoot or whatever, but there are things out there that should be left alone. And what did they experience is I can't email this guy back and ask him, hey, can you give me some more details? I mean, I'm not going to do that. I mean, the video I dropped Friday for people, if you want to go check it out on my channel, you can. It's a sad story. It's a very sad story.
Do you think, I mean, taking that report into account, the commonalities with there being a death following the sighting, admittedly a little bit further away,
Yeah.
but the almost supernatural elements and the psychic shock of that report, there's a commonality with your report, and there's a commonality with other reports that I'm conscious of as well. From all the people you talk to and your interest in the field, Rob, do you think that the Bigfoot and the Dogman phenomenon are interrelated?
Well, I think cryptids are related. I think everything's related. Cryptids, UFOs, the paranormal. I think everything's related somehow. I think somehow they're on the same plane or realm, if you will. I don't know. Now, I think of all the reports that I've gotten personally, I can't speak for anybody else. Dogman reports are always not good. You know, there's something like just not good. You know, you get a Bigfoot report crossing the road. You know, Bigfoot, in my opinion, you guys, wants to be left alone. I mean, you know what? You know, I don't think Bigfoot's going to attack you. I think a Dogman really don't attack you. I mean, we've heard about the LBL. We've heard about all these other things. But I don't think that is something I'd want to cross. I think that they have evil intentions. Whether they extract that on us, I don't know. But what happened to these kids? I don't know what happened to these kids. Hell, it could have been a pair. Who knows what it is? I can't say what that was. But yes, to answer your question in a little about way, I think they're all connected somehow.
Well, you know, Dean, when we did Joshua Cutchin's book and several, and this theme has sort of shown up in several others, that there does seem to be an overlap with a lot of these really the more bizarre cryptids, even UFOs, and this what would be more broadly called the spiritual realm or even death itself. This is not an uncommon theme. Even Tex, right? His Dogman encounter is followed by later on an encounter that can only be described as paranormal.
Yeah,
with almost like a shadow man like figure, though it's not in the house, it's outside. It's clear that this is not a normal run of the mill sort of tangible material thing. There does seem to be more. Linda Gottfried in her book, right? The one that so much of that book, a lot of the Dogman encounters are clearly out of the norm, but the one that turns to the garden says Gadara, alluding to the story from the New Testament. So, you know, again, to Rob's point, what did they actually see? Who knows? But it may be what they saw is different from what it was that they actually encountered. Because it does seem like this phenomena that is out there seems to choose whatever form it wants to take.
I think John Keel once suggested what would happen if you were looking at somebody objectively in the middle of an experience. Would they just be staring into space and somehow a phenomenon which is interacting with them spiritually or psychologically or on another level.
Yeah.
And when you hear of the report that Rob just talked about, those kids sitting in the tent saying werewolf, you have to wonder, were they always just sitting in the tent? Were they found in the middle of the experience? Was that the experience?
Yeah.
Maybe, that's a great point. Sitting in the tent like that in a trance-like state, maybe at that point that they were experiencing something, right?
Absolutely.
And then their parents woke them up and snapped them out of it. Maybe they didn't see anything at all, but it was manifested somehow through their subconscious inside the tent, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
But it was unusual that two kids, and gathering from the email, they were responsible kids in college, first year, just excited. Two dudes want to go camping. Told mom and dad will be home by noon Monday. They're sitting in a tent at 6, 7 o'clock at night, just sitting there. I mean, that is in itself weird.
Yeah, I think we enter altered states sometimes. I'm not saying every single paranormal
Right.
or cryptid or UFO experiences is an altered state, but you have to wonder how many are. We have what I thought was always a family legend until my mother finally showed me a news clipping about it. We have a family story of somebody, I think on my mother's side, a couple generations ago, disappearing at nights, and they'd always find like weird muddy footprints and water in the bedroom. And it sounds like it sounded like it was just a family legend again until I saw the news report. Eventually they followed the old newspaper article. Eventually they followed this girl, I think she was in her mid to late teens, getting up in the middle of the night and wandering out of the house through the pasture, down into the dam and swimming in the middle of the dam, total, sleepwalking, somnambulistic state. And they hollered out to her when she was in the dam. And she woke up mid-swim and drowned. That sounds like an old wives' tale, but I saw the news report which talked about it. So my point is, we do enter these other weird states. And I wonder if so many of these experiences, which aren't maybe objectively captured, which are one or two witnesses, I wonder what's really there. That doesn't diminish the report, but are they seeing objectively what they think they are seeing? Any more than my ancestor on my mother's side was really, I don't know what she thought she was doing, but she'd entered some kind of altered state and was behaving like a robot, really mechanically. She wasn't in her normal state of mind when she was doing this.
Altered states is such a perfect verbiage. I hate to tell this story. I had a cousin, Gary, little Gary. He's no longer with us. Jason, he was the front, the story.
Yeah.
He was a sleepwalker. And we were kids, probably 9, 10. But little Gary was always a weirdo too. Like I told you about, I was telling the audience a story about this kid that killed his grandmother, and I knew he was bad. I told the audience that, by the way, Dr. D, when you were gone.
Thanks for holding down the fort again.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm used to it, So, little Gary. Okay, now I'm telling you guys the story how it is. So, he was standing naked, spending the night in my mom and dad's bedroom naked, urinating in their bed with a knife in his hand, in an altered state. They woke up to their nephew, or my cousin, so I guess their nephew, naked, peeing, naked on their bed, knife in the hand. My mom and dad freaked, as anybody would.
Yeah.
And immediately, and what you're not supposed to do is wake up a person supposedly sleepwalking, right? Well, my dad got a bed, tackled his butt, and threw him on the ground. But there was no fight back. It worked out perfectly. Thinking back about that altered states, I don't know what sleepwalking is. I don't know what sleep paralysis is. I don't know what any of these things are to it. According to science, I don't know what they are. I have an idea what they are. But reflecting back to these kids in the tent, maybe that's the type of state they were in. I like that altered states. I saw the movie. I never used that terminology. I start using that now.
Yeah. Well, it's something that we've discovered, and other researchers have discovered very recently. Now that we're starting to take other, more things that you would traditionally consider to be ghost hunting apparatus, EM field meters, Geiger counters. There's certain uh, sonic spectrum analyzers, and we're starting to pick up things like infrasound, odd radiation spikes that aren't supposed to be there that will even move, weird EM spikes that seemingly move. That's one of the questions that I think that needs to be more addressed by the community, which is, and to Dean, we just did that again, that one mysterious library on the possibility of there being these aerial, that some UFOs may be these aerial life forms, right? Again, I went the 40, we flipped, and I went the 40 in world on that one, where it's like, well, but what if these life forms are so far outside of our norm that the things that we were sort of seeing isn't just an echo or their imprint on our reality? It may be that a lot of these events are essentially created in our head, right? But that there is an external thing, an EM field, a radiation field, infrasound, and that those things are being created by whatever these entities really are, but that essentially the event is, to your point, happening in our head, right? And it's being created by our subconscious, which is why sometimes people in the same spot having the same encounter can have different events, right? Well, it's because the event is being essentially created by their brains, but it's not that it's just some random some random hallucination. It rather, there is something external, there is something happening, there is an entity there, but our brains are processing it differently.
Yeah, again, Keel used to talk about this other energy, the super spectrum or something impacting us. So how do we know how sometimes some electromagnetic field we don't understand, which passes through, or something comes and generates that field, how we don't respond psychologically and biologically to these type of changes? I mean, Pessinger's done these studies with the God helmet, where you can put a helmet on somebody, blast them with certain electromagnetic kind of, rays or forces, and people will experience having something else in the room with them. So we're clearly susceptible. That doesn't mean there isn't a genuine external phenomenon, but something's impacting people.
So, this is such a cool conversation. Even when we're breaking down my encounter we did earlier, Jason, I just come up to a realization of something even here too. Like, remember I always talk about I was looking through a filter when the thing manifested into the demon that I always call it, whatever it was, who knows. But I started seeing through a filter where the beautiful forest, the green of forest, black, and everything turned black and white or dull. Everything seemed kind of pixelated and in slow motion. And I know that Cindy falls into the water, but I'm seeing like in a different dimension, it seems, and I'm turning to get her and I can't. But however, my question is this: had there been somebody in a boat 30 feet away, would they experience the same thing that I was experiencing? Would they have seen me in a slow motion mode? I doubt it. Would they have seen that creature on the shoreline? I don't know. But I can't imagine anyone seeing the state that I was in. I think I was moving so slow, like just like if you stopped a video and put it down to 0.5, right, from 1.
Right.
Did someone see me, not being able to move? Or was it just because I was alone and that was the opportunity that was taken by this entity, right?
Yeah.
So, does that make sense? Because to me, it's
kind
of think differently now.
Right. Exactly. I mean, the call, the core of your question is, again, that to Dean's point, what would the objective observer see? Right?
Right.
I don't think he would have seen you necessarily slow down so much as just maybe just appear to be in an altered state.
Yeah.
But again, the question is, does he see the Sasquatch? Right.
Yeah. Right.
Or does he just see you and your girlfriend in the boat just kind of being weird? Right. Like he saw, they're just a couple drunk people in a boat. Right.
Well, right. Which you could easily blow off on a lake middle of the day in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of the core of all of these questions. Again, I will never say I've had a Bigfoot encounter, but it's like, when we had that one encounter in Brown Springs, Tex is talking about two things moving around the cars while I'm asleep. But while I'm asleep, I have a dream of 2 or 3 figures made of fire, right? Walking towards the car. Again, they came from the direction that they were in my dream. So what do we do with that?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Isn't it that today in modernity, we differentiate these states as being somehow more real than the other? Like a dream to modern man, Western modern man is less real than a physical experience. But in older traditions, the dream, when it feels that significant, is as real ontologically as the experience of somebody who actually was awake. So we've done this terrible short circuit to ourselves as far as how we approach these things. We always want this physical literalism, but then we ignore those other more psychic aspects of it, including the dream state, I think.
Yeah. That's again another topic there. And what about the sleep paralysis state or guys, this is such a fascinating, what we do is fascinating. We study and look into, because once you think you know something, you don't. And like today, I just learned something new, thinking now about my encounter, because talking through this today. And again, I've told my encounter 1,000 times, and today I've got to get another Jason opinion now, or theory on what it is that I experience.
Yeah,
it's never ending. These topics are never ending.
Well, Rob, I'll be honest, your Bigfoot encounter was one of the most fascinating and potent Bigfoot encounters I've ever heard. And I think that we often forget the human impact of paranormal experiences, but one of the things your experience outlays so well is the incredible psychological and physical impact that these things have. We just kind of dismiss these things, oh, they saw a Bigfoot, whatever. But when you look deeper, often people have these really potent reactions to these experiences, whatever they are. They impact us at a very fundamental and important level.
And as again, Jason knows me well enough. I don't even like missing a show because of I'm sick or internet issues. He knows me. I'm a trooper. I want to work. For me not to go to work for 6 months is just totally out of my character. Totally, 100%.
Well, Rob, Nancy, one of my favorite listeners who always watches the show, said, I wish this convo would go on another hour or more. Well, let's do another Talking Weird soon with both Rob and Jason, and we can go down these passages more. Now, Jason, since you helped me out, I'll let you say first, and then I'll let Rob say, where do people get a hold of the things that you do other than Mysterious Library with me every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Central on the Untold Radio Network?
Well, you can actually find the link to everything at serupapers.com, but I do have a new channel up, Jason McLean Questions Everything. But again, you can hop over to Texas Front Porch, and the links are all in the doobly-doo below.
And Rob, thank you so much for coming on. I love this conversation. I'm so glad I wasn't that conscious of your actual report, because it just fascinated me. But how do people get a hold of what you're up to?
Well, my channel is Bigfoot Michigan Rob. I do 2 shows a week, and I do encounter stories. I'm of course affiliated with Texas Front Porch. Subscribe to him, me, Jason. Of course, we all work together, do a variety of things 6 days a week. That's where you can find me predominantly. I'm on all social media, and the links, like Jason would say, look at my doobly-doo on my YouTube page. You can find all the links.
Well, Jason, thank you for saving my bacon when my internet got zapped by the powers that be. I think it's the Darrow in the cave missing.
The Darrow in the caves,
but whatever.
It was funny because I was going through I was telling the one story about the kid, Jason, the kid that I killed the grandma. And I was going through that and saw you pop up. I'm like, okay, Dr. Dean's really got some internet issues today. But it worked out. It was a pleasure to do that. I could have done the whole show, Dean.
Rob, you're a professional. Thank you so much for stepping up. I loved having you here. Let's have you back, and let's get Jason back next time we do it as well.
Yeah,
and we can go down.
I always like talking with Jason
more. I love talking with you both. Thank you so much, guys.
Little 40 and menage a trois.
And until I chat to you and everybody out there again next, and which will be actually not even on Talking Weird, but Tuesday night with Jason and I here on the network, 9 p.m. for Mysterious Library. But until then, keep it weird.
Keep it weird.